Alrighty, so week 9, whew, the last week in CIT 82. And here's our last items that we'll work through. This last lecture will be fairly short. So before we get started here though, pull up your lecture doc. And in attendance this week, I talked about the fact that I'm not going to be around on this day, right? So I have made you all on the attendance reply do that you understood. Last day I was going to be on campus is the 11th. So what I want you to do here is I've taken this from draft to final, unless you have any other things that I need to clear up. Ooh, I'm going to take 15 off there. So we've went over most of this, right? And we've talked about your categories becoming your menus. We've talked about the 21 pages. We've talked about where you get the content from. We'll talk a little more about strategies this week. Unique titles on each page. I talked about that last week. And that each 200 words for your index file and then 150 words just for those breakdown, those menu pages. And then last week I did talk about two different ideas, right? Remember this idea of how you indicate, and I used a tag cloud subpages within those menu main pages, right? So that you need to write 150 words here, and part of that content could just link to your subpages, or you could do some kind of tag cloud or something like that. So you could do 2 columns there, right? This is really your decision about how you want to do that. Okay. And then your bootstrap template, right? You've done this last week. You've selected it. This is the one you're going to use. This is the 2 I've modified here, and I need to assign points to the last one, and I will, is to upload, get pushed to your GitHub pages and place your link. This is project 0. This is not this week's work. I'm just going over it, right? So in your notes, right, you have to give me a link. And the last thing you want to do is give me a heading that says my grade, and give me what grade you feel you deserve and why. Okay? And then on the submission, give me your lecture doc URL. All right? So that's the project that you need to do, or that's the requirements for the project that is 25% of this class. Okay? So hopefully that is helpful. And like I said, you also need to have already implemented, based on last week, your favicon into your site as well. So this week I've decided that the importance of artificial intelligence, and really these days we're not saying AI as much as we're saying ML, okay? So more people are talking about machine learning, okay? And the talk that Feifei Li, who's really one of I think just an amazing brain in this world to talk about this, right? That gives computers the ability to learn without explicitly programming. So and this is obviously years, and the question would be, how far in the future is this, right? So right now we explicitly program, right? So we give the computer step-by-step instruction, and we tell it to execute that. Where we're heading in not all but many related computer science or programming development areas is using the machine to just for us to train the machine on the outcome we want, and for the computer to figure out the path to get there. Now, there was an interesting video today, and I definitely recommend you check this out. I'm not going to make you take notes, but I think it's worth your 3 minutes. It's called AI Experiments, Teachable Machines. And it really gives a very straightforward example of how we can train machines to respond on not a lot of input. Now, this is a very simple example. If you were using libraries like TensorFlow, TensorFlow is an open source library from Google for you to take more complex situations and either use their training database, this part right here, their training data, and leverage it for your own needs or create your own training data. And I have actually talked to several people here, local Valley, who are already working on some of this. So this is a reality. This is a reality that's going to hit everyone. Here's another interesting statistic I heard just recently as I was on a call with some folks from Google, and they were attending a cloud machine learning conference, and the number that was thrown out was that 85% of what most people do on a daily basis as far as the computer goes for their work can be handled by machine learning. It's just a matter of us training the models. So what's that going to do to us as culture, as in economy, as people? What is that going to do? I mean, some people have speculated about this whole, that we're just going to have so much more free time, which could be the reality, and how does that affect us? And but of those people that the machine can take over, what are they going to do? Right? What's that going to do to the job market? So I think it's good to hear, at least so you can understand, because right now, learning about artificial intelligence, machine learning, understanding how to train computers is something in our futures. And I think it's worth checking out. So anyway, that's your lecture for this week. As far as your first item of the week. So the next two items are related. Okay, so we're switching topics here. So and I do have it in the order I think it would be best to look at it. So last week we talked about web development or web dev build systems, and this week I want to take just a little bit of it because we didn't really talk about it, is what is Node Package Manager, because there are others besides Node that came out in last week's discussion, but Node is by far the most popular. Okay, so in order, you don't have to be programming. Okay, so let's just be clear. Node is JavaScript on the server or JavaScript placed where it's not running on the browser. Because even though you may not be programming in Node, which by the way, next semester I'm teaching Node, just to plug, on campus Wednesday nights from 6 to 9:50. Let me know if you have any questions about that. But even if you're not programming in Node, having Node on your system is really helpful, because you can go out and get all these different packages to use to make your web development process more efficient, a lot of different things. So first I want you to watch this video, and then you have two options as far as what you want to do this week. One is you can actually install an npm module and then run and it's running a server locally, because what we've been doing up until this point is we've just been viewing your HTML files in the browser by just telling it to open up the file. But if you go on with this development area, and especially if you take 93 from me and even 94, you're going to have to run a server locally. Okay, so all my students taking 93 right now have already done this, because this is an important part of what I have students do, which is to run a browser locally. So you can do that, and I'll show you in a minute just what it looks like. Or you can just go to the site, npm, and then look at what they have, and then select a package and research it, how it's used in web development. The flow, right? So how is it used? Why is it used? Do some research, give us some links. So you have two options. You can either do something or you can research something for the current topics here. Okay? If you do decide to do this, then what you need to do is actually get a server running, and I'll show you what that looks like next, and then give us a print screen, a link to that. So if I was to just pull up, before you do this, so if you want to do this part, you first have to install npm. It's very, very simple. Node.js, right? So all you basically have to do, this is a browser install, and it'll go to whatever operating system, and it'll give you the ability to download it. You can download, there's actually two kind of, there's one for most users and then the most current that's out there. I'm running the more current. Now, how do I know? And you can do this one, that's fine. How do I know? Well, if I move over to my editor and I do, after I've done the install, which by the way, anytime you do an install like this, you generally have to stop your terminal or your editor and start it back up. So I'm running version 8.3.0. Okay, so once you do that piece, which is fairly straightforward, then you'll do the, and I'm going to show this, I'm going to move over to Windows real quick. Then you would do the browser. It was called browser sync. Okay, so the step one is what we just talked about. And you can just go to browsersync.io and then you run npm install G flag. In this case, it's a flag at the command line is for global browser sync, right? And then you actually run browser sync, right? And this actually right here runs it. Now, why am I talking about this? The reason I'm talking about this is that the next item that I'm going to talk about in our class, which is content strategies, how you get through and get all these updates, one thing that can make your life easier is this browser sync. And the reason is that when you run it, when you're looking, and I'm going to have mine side by side here, and actually this is actually running, this is the example of running it from a file. And I'm going to run it, I'm going to run the server, and actually I'm going to add a command, if you can see this. So this is basically this command right here from their site, but I'm adding, because I found in my install, or the way it runs, I did browser-sync space start space dash dash server space dash dash files space open quote star HTML comma CSS, which is the directory it's going to pull the CSS / star period CSS end of quotes. So what happens, and this is the result of having the package, when you run this, it actually runs. So instead of now looking at this output as far as a local, you're actually looking at it from what it would look like running from the server. So you don't have to do that git push to see what it looks like from the server's perspective, because testing it locally on a file the way we were doing it before is fine, but this is really the better way to do it. Now here's the other benefit. It's called live reload. So as I come over here and I'm looking, let's do it right here, right? So, before I do this, one other thing you'll need to make sure here is that you have autosave on. And if you try to turn that on and you get an error, you have to go into your settings. And you go into your settings and make sure you have, believe it or not, and actually I need to do this. I see and it didn't save. I need to actually do this. Just say off. I know that might not make sense, but it's actually, and here's why. And we actually set up live autosave last time, and here's why. Let's see if it works. Is when you make a change, right, and it changed, then what it will do, let's see if it actually will do it now that I've talked about it, is it actually should automatically live reload. Actually, see, it's actually not saving. I have to play with that a little bit, because as soon as I save, it triggers that. So I just have to play with my, yeah, that's right, when you go in there and do settings, then it turns it off. So let's try that again. So here's load, right? So let's do this. I'm going to take off this. Now as soon as I do that, my browser sync automatically says, oh, you have changes here, so I'm going to show you that. It just makes your life easier, right, when you're developing. Oh, so let me go back. But by the way, it'll any of those files, not just your index files. So I'm just saying, so let's do live reload. So make sure, again, you don't have to do this. I just found when I'm doing development, it just makes it so much quicker so that I can change something and without really having to do anything, see that thing happen. Right? Live reload is just a nice thing to be able to have. Okay, so again, two options there, whatever you want to do. Hopefully you're still taking a few notes here, about just understanding if you do, and it's a good thing to have Node.js installed. It's a good thing to have the ability, to walk through doing an install. I will tell you, when you're doing the install, depending on how your computer is set up, it may ask you for your user password. There's actually a whole discussion in a future we would have about whether that's a good thing, because there's ways to actually, that may not be the best way to do it, but it may prompt you for that. So for now, you're probably fine. So anyway, a little more than you probably wanted to hear, but it is just necessary. So you have an option, and I'm telling you that. So the last thing is really just a continuation of last time, right? So you should be making good progress on your project 0. So what I want you to do now is just continue to work on this, right? And I want you to complete your site map, right? So, and actually that's the thing in project 0 I do need to include is in your lecture, in your submission for project 0, I do want a link to your site plan, right? That drawing, however you want to do it. But let me just say this. So anyway, and you can give us the link, actually just provide us a link to your drawing, and if you want, also a link to your site. But this is just me helping you continue, because last week I talked about, strategies for how to actually make this site flow, as far as pulling, the content you're going to write, and then the content you're going to pull from what you've already done. And again, you can pull that content from anywhere. That means your notes, right? You could actually pull anything from the lectures we've done to the current topics to the hands-on. Any of that stuff is available for you to cut and paste into the pages, the sub-pages of the menu. Okay, and actually just images too. You could do that as well. You could actually use some of the images you already have created. So, but having said that, I do want to, for a moment here, I'm going to move over and just kind of show you I talked about this last time, so I think, again, it's important to reiterate to make your life easier, is to go through on your index file, figure out your menu, what that's going to look like, figure out the actual files, and then the links themselves on your, and some of you may have sub menus on there to where when you click on one of those, you get another menu. So having this set up before you start creating these other files is really important. Okay, and really helpful. And also paring down that content to where you don't have to delete it every time is kind of setting up, a template file, and you could use your index if you want it, right? Or not. But I do want to see, like in my example that I was showing you here, right? So is that each one of those needs to have some kind of, and your picture in this case could be your backdrop that you're using here. And you saw me demo this on my example of the project site. What I'm just saying is that so let me just back up. All right, so rewind this. So first I would strip out most of the content, or all the stuff you're not going to use, right? Set up your menu, both text and where they're going to go as far as the links, right? And then either, right, create a subpage from there, or take one of your existing subpages, right? Copy that. Remember, copy and paste is your friend here. Don't forget that. Copy and paste is your friend, and to make this easier. If you had created a couple of subpages already, if you don't do it the way I'm suggesting, which is okay too, but you remember, you can just copy and paste those, let's say they're LIs, because I think for most of you it will be, into that UL, right? That unordered list, so that you have that menu, so that you don't have to go in there and code it, although coding is good. Okay, so those are just, as I've said before, and again, it doesn't hurt to bring back the example that I had shown you last time about this, right? So and on mine that I ultimately worked on, and I changed it from home because I was like, well, I'll just create a little icon to do that. And then I customized my background images, right? And then I had my text cloud I've talked about a couple times. Again, you could do this various ways, however you want. But these are examples, okay? So just continue, right? You know, and this would be a great point too, to be asking questions about stuff you're not clear on what needs to happen. Okay, so that is almost the last thing we have in this class. All is left is our last lecture, and that I will work on probably today or tomorrow, because I'm doing this a week ahead of time. And I will say this, FYI, I graded this morning the bootstrap analysis, and some of you didn't get, and obviously I wasn't clear if this is the case because enough of you didn't get it that it makes me really think I didn't, is that the idea was for you to go through and analyze your bootstrap layout, and in order to do that you really had to analyze the classes. And many of you didn't. You just kind of gave me, here's where the structure is. And although that's good, it's not going to help you as much when you go to do Project Zero, because that, having done that analysis, would make your life here much, much easier. But FYI. All right, that's it for me. Have that in your classwork, class topics, and then have your Google Gets Aggressive with AI lecture notes. This talk actually at Cloud. This was at Cloud Next 2017. As you can see, it's not that bad, right? It's 25 minutes. That's why I've given you some other things in there to check out. And I definitely, you know, there's definitely talks on TensorFlow that you could check out more, machine learning stuff. I definitely recommend spending a little time when you can looking at what's happening in this space, because it's going to affect you, everyone in different ways. All right, that's enough for me. See you later.